Hello everyone, I'm Michael, and today, I'm going to tell you a story. Men of Reddit, what's the creepiest thing a woman has ever said to you? Story 1, I just wanted to see if you'd stay. Now, the reason this was fucking crazy is because preceding that I got a text from her saying she maybe missed a period. I said something like, oh, okay, so what if you're pregnant? She volunteered an abortion. Cool, good shit. I don't have to worry about raising a kid at 16. Keep in mind we weren't even sure yet that she was pregnant. So then suddenly she texts me saying maybe she changed her mind and she would want to keep it if she were pregnant. So I reasonably asked what changed. She says she just might want to keep the kid if she's pregnant, and I keep sort of driving after it. Okay, but what's different between now and an hour or two ago when you brought up an abortion? She accuses me of pressuring her, calls me an asshole, and stops responding to my texts. A day or two later, she tells me she wasn't ever even pregnant in the first place and, see the quote above. That's why she said she went through all that shit, and I guess her not knowing the kind of person I am made that okay for her to do. God, I wish it had ended there. Story 2, I bartended at a small dive bar years ago. It was late one night, and I had a lone female guest. She was probably middle-aged, polite and short while ordering her drink. I thought nothing strange or got no red flags, so I continued my closing duty, sweeping around the tables in particular, not behind the bar. I'm focused on cleaning and getting out of there, and I turn around to dump dustpan, and she's standing right behind me staring me dead in the eye. Will you dance with me? She asks in a slow, nervous manner. For the record, there is no music playing, and we're the only two living creatures in the building. I tell politely that I'm closing and cannot right now, and quickly put distance and walk behind the bar. In the 5 seconds I have to walk through the kitchen, this guest has walked back to her stool and begun hysterically crying at the top of her lungs. She asks me if I think she's ugly, fat, unattractive, a whore, and several more derogatory things which I deny and deflect. She screams and tells me she hates me and runs out of the bar. I wring the beer she drank half of up as a waste and lock the door. I continued to work there for 7 more years and never saw this guest again. Story 3, not something she said, but I was in line at Starbucks and this lady just started sniffing me. Like head back, eyes closed deep sniffing me a chem from the back of my neck. It was weird. When she saw me turn my head, she quickly acted like she was looking at the food. Odd situation. Story 4, mine is so harmless in comparison to a lot of these, but was stoned and hooking up with this girl. We are foreplaying and she's sitting cowgirl kissing my neck and I'm digging it. Suddenly, she's like licking and slurping my neck and chest. She sits up, moves her face an inch from mine to stare into my eyes and says, "Where did you get your skin? It's delicious." Story 5, mine is so harmless in comparison to a lot of these, but was stoned and hooking up with this girl. We are foreplaying and she's sitting cowgirl kissing my neck and I'm digging it. Suddenly, she's like licking and slurping my neck and chest. She sits up, moves her face an inch from mine to stare into my eyes and says, "Where did you get your skin? It's delicious." Story 6, this weekend at Veld Music Festival in Toronto, I was actually aggressively approached. A girl had grabbed my arm as my friend and I were walking by. As I tried to pull away, she looked me dead in the eye and said nothing. I said, "Sorry, I'm in a hurry to the bathroom. Can't talk." She then proceeded to touch my stomach and tried to get a handful of my package. Throughout all this, she said nothing. Scared the shit out of me. Story 7, as a child, 10yo, my then stepmom requested some specific candy bar from my trick-or-treating haul. When I refused, she casually said, "I'll rape you for it." I had only a vague idea what the word meant, but it sounded like bad news. Bonus, same individual performed a tactile inspection of my downstairs when I tried on a new bathing suit to ensure that my package was alright. Story 8, a few years ago, I started hanging out with this girl who was around my friend group at the time and came to trivia nights with us occasionally. Things were going well at first, but then I started noticing some odd signs. She never slept. She would do bizarre things like start her shower, then go start cooking food, then sit down and begin tending her plants as if she kept forgetting what task she was doing. She put a sign out on her lawn with her cell phone number on it wanting to connect with strangers. It got weirder as it went on. I mentioned to her once that I liked thunderstorms and she became convinced that I could cause thunderstorms. At first I thought she was joking, but it started to weird me out. Then one night when I was sleeping over, I noticed that she was just sitting in bed watching me. She put her hand on my heart and whispered that she could hear the beautiful fishes in my blood. That very morning, her father burst into her apartment yelling about her appointment with the psychiatrist that she kept avoiding. She told me that her parents and the doctors were trying to convince her that she had bipolar disorder and wanted to shut her brain off. Long story short, her friends and family convinced her to go. She bravely took on her mental illness and got help before the manic episode got out of control. And now, we are very close friends to this day. Story 9. A complete and total stranger walked over to me and said, "I need you to rearrange my guts with your cock." She pointed at the men's bathroom and then walked over and into it. While I left, this woman had 20 years at least on everyone in that place. And the best way for me to describe how she looked is to say half-crushed Birkin. Story 10. I was 14, she was 16. Just started talking due to our mutual friends were dating. After a week she drops, "I got a bun in the oven, and you can be the father." Hung up the phone and never spoke to her again. Story 11. I worked at a fast food place years ago. My girlfriend came in for a milkshake and was waiting at the end of the counter with one of our regulars. Doris, the regular, was near 90 years old and had invited me home to have pot roast at her house multiple times. I was being a pain and put about a foot of whipped cream over the top of the lid of my milkshake and brought it to her. Doris looked at her, then looked at me deadpan and said, "I wish you'd cream me like that." Doris never ordered desserts. Story 12. I had a gal tell me she was gonna follow me home and fuck the dog shit out of me whether I wanted it or not. For context, I was living in the Bronx at the time. I heard shit like that all the time. Story 13. I worked at a caviar bar in SF, and it was basically cougar bait. One time this relatively older lady said, "You look just like my son. You should come home with me. He should not follow from a." Story 14. If I see you in 10 years with a different woman and you're married, I will kill her and you in your sleep. That was after I dumped my ex. That is definitely in the top 10 of creepiest things I've been told. Then there's others like, "Do you think if I saved your cum in my freezer, I could have your child when I felt ready?" That was by someone I dated for a little over 2 months. Then there was one who told me, "I would honestly don't mind if you fucked my friends, but I would cut off your cock if you fell for one of them." I've met my share of crazy. Story 15. As a physical therapist, fresh out of PT school, I was tasked with massaging the piriformis muscle of a 40-something woman who was in town on business. For those of you who don't know, the piriformis is located in the area of the butt. So, it was already dicey. She was wearing a skirt and a thong underneath. As I was massaging, she began verbally directing me. Lower, to the right, lower, right some more, etc. Essentially verbally moving my hands to her anus. As I was getting closer, I was also getting more uncomfortable. Finally, I said, "This isn't where your piriformis muscle is." She basically proceeded to tell me I was incompetent and that she has had this done many times, and I was the one that didn't know where the piriformis was. Then she threatened that she was friends with the owner, and if I didn't massage where she wanted, she was going to complain. I told her that was okay, and I didn't feel comfortable touching the area she was wanting me to massage, and I left the room. She left, and nobody ever mentioned it to me, and I never saw her again. Story 16. Would it be weird if my son called you dad? I was 18, she was 25. We were coworkers at a Walmart photo lab, and she said that to me on the phone while I was walking to her place to hook up for the first time. I was young and horny and simply said, no, he'd just be wrong. Story 17. Had an ex who routinely threatened to cut it off. Any chance she got, she would have her hands on it and sometimes would say things like, "If you ever cheat on me, I'll cut you dick off, and if I could cut it off and keep it in a jar, I wouldn't need you anymore." I would wake up with her holding onto it while looking at me. Crazy but yeah. Story 18. When I was younger, I worked in a bar popular with 18 to 20-year-olds. One night as a group of girls was leaving, I made eye contact with one of them. That was enough. She came stumbling up to the bar and said, "I have to show you the background on my phone." She put her phone on the bar, and the background was a picture of me. I took it about 3 weeks ago. I'm totally obsessed. Your photo is the last thing I see before I go to sleep, and the first thing I see when I wake up. Story 19. Back in college, I was at a study group, and I found myself talking to this girl. Just talking about class, and eventually just talking about random other stuff like life at school and favorite places to eat nearby. Then after a moment of silence, she tells me that she wants to see me fight off a group of guys trying to attack her, and she'd hold me while I was beaten up and bleeding on the floor. I mean, just randomly dropping that on someone when a minute ago we were talking about best places to get cheap food is a bit much. Story 20. Was on a nearly empty plane, sitting in the last row, in a window seat. No one else in the row. I eventually fell asleep. Woke up with a tatted-up goth-looking chick sitting next to me, eyes boring a hole through my head, just straight up staring unblinkingly at me. I look at her and I'm like, hi. She stares for like 5 more long seconds, and then exhales. Sorry, you look like an angel sleeping with the sun on your face, she said breathlessly. We chatted for maybe another 30 seconds or so. She apologized for staring like that a couple more times. Then she went back to her seat. Shit was surreal though. Story 21. I recently spent the weekend with a woman. We have hooked up periodically for the last 25 years. Anyways, we were chatting and she brought up how a guy she had dated insisted he come to a doctor's appointment with her. The doctor informed her that she has herpes, and the guy was disturbed by this. She was complaining about this to me hours after we had sex. She was bitching to a guy who just slept with her that another guy was disturbed by her being diagnosed with herpes. So far I have had no blisters, but it's the last time I will hook up with her.